Welcome to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with me, Shelley Fishel of Tomorrow's VA and Joe Brianti of JLB Business Consulting. Each week we chat with amazing guest experts, all aimed at helping you grow your VA business. So sit back, grab a cuppa and tune in for a fun-filled episode. Welcome back, listeners, to this week's episode of Virtually Amazing. And I can't believe we're here another week, although as we record this, we have already recorded another episode today. So it does all kind of feel a bit surreal when we record more than one episode in a day, because it feels like, oh, well, what are we going to talk about next? So, but we always manage to do that, don't we?
As we were saying just before we came on to record, since this morning, I've discovered that my children have eaten the out of house and home, which is nothing unusual. It's a common theme that I talk about. And it looks like I'm going to be shopping again. I just don't know where they put it. I just don't know where they put it.
Well, boys at that age have got hollow legs. We got back from the UK yesterday, so there was nothing in the fridge. I left. We were only away for a week, so I left milk and eggs in the fridge so that when we got in, we could have a cup of tea from our 1,040 tea bags that we just brought back with us. And if we wanted a scrambled egg, at least there was the wherewithal to make scrambled eggs. Yeah. And my supermarket shopping arrived this morning. And I just put the meat and the yogurts and the milk in the fridge, left everything else while we recorded our first episode this morning. So while I was making lunch, I put everything else away. And my fridge at the moment, for the next hour or so, is so packed you can't see. But it won't be like that very long because some of it needs to go in the freezer and some of it's going to get cooked. So it's all going to get tidied up. But here in Israel, when I do my supermarket shopping, you can't order by number. When I'm talking fruit and veg, you have to order by weight. And the minimum amount of most vegetables or fruit that you can order is 1/2 kilo.
Right.
Now, do you know how many peppers you get in 1/2 kilo?
I would imagine quite a lot.
Yeah, and I wasn't thinking because I wanted 2 red peppers and 2 yellow peppers, and I must have 10 of each. And
so have you actually put 2 and they brought you 2 kilos, right?
No. 500
I've done that
grams.
before.
Yeah, no, I used to do that. I did that with apples once. I ordered from Tesco, and I thought I'd ordered 2 bags of apples, and I'd ordered 20. We had a lot of apples that week. Lots of apple pie. No, but joking aside, it's funny, and there's other things that, like I had 2 packs of lettuce and I'm sure I only ordered 1. But that could be a mistake. I mean, probably a mistake on my part, but I always forget I must not buy peppers because 1/2 kilo of peppers is far too much. I don't eat peppers. They don't agree with me. They really do nasty things to me.
Even if you eat them cooked?
I can eat them if they're flavored something. But I don't eat the actual pepper. And I really like peppers, but I've discovered...
I'll tell you what's really nice. Roast them. Dress them in some olive oil. Just roast them so they're nice and soft. Blitz them with some tomatoes and make a tomato and red pepper soup.
Yeah, I might do that. I might well do that. I didn't get lots of tomatoes, though. But I did get lots of peppers because David doesn't eat tomatoes, so I only ever buy enough tomatoes just for me.
Just do the peppers on their own, roasted pepper soup.
I might do that. I'll see. I might well do that later. I'm making butternut squash soup later anyway because I've got 2 butternut squash sitting in the fridge. So that's my job for later. But anyway, we're just talking about food here. We both like talking about food, so that's good. I hope listeners, I hope we're not boring you rigid. But that brings us on to, I think we ought to talk about something worky related now, which is our next guest. And our next guest is the wonderful Suzi Flynn. And Suzi was a guest at the beginning of last year, in January 2021. She was a guest, and we're here when this airs in January 2022. So it's really nice to top and tail the year, or to start each year with a chat with Suzi. So I think we'll go and tee up and bring her on. Welcome back, listeners. And we've now been joined by the lovely Suzi Flynn, who we chatted with, I think it was January 2020 originally.
I think it was the beginning of this year, actually, Shelley.
Yeah.
So I think we've topped and tailed
Oh,
the
yes.
year.
2021. I meant 21. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm certainly getting confused with what years are what, because this last 2 years has been a bit of a wipeout, hasn't it?
Yes, it's certainly been interesting.
Interesting is a good word for it. A good word for it.
Yeah.
So remind our listeners, Suzi, in case they've joined us since we last spoke, or it's such a long time ago and they don't remember, who you are, what you do, and then we'll talk about our subject of choice today is mindset. So
yes,
we'll get straight in there.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, thank you both for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be back. So my name's Suzi from Suzi Flynn Coaching, and I worked as an assistant in corporate London for 22 years until I launched my coaching business in 2017. I now work with assistants who want to build a virtual assistant business, and I help them with the mindset and the strategy around building that business, so they have a strategy for long-term growth, so they can build the freedom, flexibility that they desire and deserve, and basically, create life on their terms, which is really exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So have you been really busy in the last year or two?
It was busier last year than this year, but there's different things happening. There's been a lot of podcasts this year. There's different things I'm working on in my business this year, and I've got a new online course coming out in probably Q1 2022. So that's exciting. I've launched my Facebook group, Grow Your Virtual Assistant Business with Confidence. So I'm enjoying supporting the community in there as well, and getting involved.
Oh, excellent. So what is it about mindset then that's so important?
I personally believe that if we have the strategy but we don't have the mindset, then we can't get the same results, because if we don't believe that we can create something or do something, then we're going to self-sabotage our success. And there's so many different ways that we can self-sabotage our success, from being a perfectionist and not getting anything out there till it's absolutely perfect, and being overly hard on ourselves. Now, I raise my hand to that because it's definitely something that, or a place that I used to sit in for a long time. I'm a lot better, and there is a difference between high standards and perfectionism. Yeah. But other forms of self-sabotage could be trying to put too much on your plate. That's the one I'm working on now. I'm an overachiever, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner. I want to serve, but at the same time, when you try and do too much, you don't do enough, and you don't really move forward. And it's just your mind's way of trying to keep you safe, stuck in the same place. But we're not going to grow if we stay where we are. And yes, of course, it is uncomfortable to make change, but I do believe that uncomfortable is the new comfortable, because we have to get uncomfortable with ourselves. And I'm sure you and Joe will resonate with this as business owners. Yeah. You have to get uncomfortable, because once you get through that fear, which 95% of the time is just fear, it's not, it doesn't, 95% of the time it doesn't manifest into reality. Once you get past that fear and take that action, your confidence starts to increase. You start to believe in yourself more, and you start to take more aligned action towards the goals that you want to create. So having the right mindset and having the confidence and belief that you can do it is so, so important, because if you don't have that right from the beginning, then you won't try.
Yeah. I could see you nodding away there, Joe. Which bit were you nodding at?
Well, quite a lot of it, actually, because I really agree with you. And I think there's a lot around the mindset piece. I mean, for a start, there's the mindset piece of moving from an employee to working for yourself. And that's a really big mindset shift.
It's huge.
Once you become that confident freelancer, and this is where I'll put my hand up here, right? Because this is my space I'm talking about, is I know about being confident enough about putting yourself out there and being really visible. And prior to this podcast, right, big revelation, I never put myself out like this. When Shelley first asked me to be the co-host and work with her on it, I said, oh yeah. Then I went home and I thought, oh my God, what have I just done there? And then there was all these questions about, God, I'm going to be out there. And there's all these words about, I should do this. And then this little gremlin goes, oh, you sure? Are you sure? And yeah, it is that whole thing about, in my case, it is that just being out there. I've never done a Facebook Live. I mean, people just go on and they have this chat on, and I just think, how do you do that? How do you just, because it's not my natural space. And for me, the minute you start seeing me do Facebook Lives, you'll know that I've gone over this big, big, big jump, because it's not my place of comfort.
Oh, well, I expect to see those next year, Jo.
I totally buy that whole thing.
And the first one is always the hardest with the Facebook Live. I mean, I remember I did my first Facebook Live a few years ago, and it was terrible. I mean, they always are going to be, because you don't know what you're doing. You can't learn from experience until you have that experience. Mm-hmm. The lighting was bad. I was holding the camera. The background wasn't good. And now I love doing Facebook Lives, but that wasn't always the case, because the brain likes the familiar. And we all have sets of beliefs about different areas of our life, which are created in what we call our pre-conscious years, which is up to the age of 7, which is before we develop critical thinking. And we effectively take on board the experiences and the things that we're told or things that we hear from our caregivers, whether it be teachers or parents or older siblings or whoever it may be, or even society. And then we create meaning based on what we experience. And it may be that in your childhood, Jo, there's something there about it's not safe to speak up, it's not safe to be visible. There's always that kind of subconscious programming that's like, don't do that because it's not safe. And we have to reprogram that to let the mind know what actually is safe. And sometimes one of the best ways to do that is just take action. Get through the fear and take action, although it's terrifying. And I can see Jo's face, she's like, I'm not doing it.
There's that face, look.
Yeah. And I guess that's where I come in as a coach, is my clients, to support them, because as I think, was it Shelley, you were saying about the whole shift from being an employee to a business owner. No, Jo, thanks, sorry, Jo. And that's what I went through, and I went through it in a very interesting way. I didn't go, right, I've built up enough of a client base, I'm going to quit. I had quite a serious accident in the May of 17 on my mountain bike, and then I just built the business and then didn't go back to corporate. So it wasn't as planned as I would like it to be. And I went through the whole range of emotions. There was so much fear. And I knew if I wanted to make it a success, I had to find a way to go over, go under, go round that fear, and just really work on my mindset. And I've done a lot and continue to do a lot on the mindset piece. And it's definitely an area that I'm fascinated with, and I love supporting my clients with, because to go from being an employee to being a business owner, you're going from being an assistant that's like effectively back office support, you're not out there, to suddenly like, oh, I've got to be visible. And it makes us feel vulnerable, and we don't like to feel vulnerable, do we?
No.
That's really interesting, because as a trainer, my job was to be out there. So that was never an issue for me when I set up my business, which is over 20 something years ago now. So when I first set up, I mean, it's had a couple of reincarnations and rebrands, but it's the same business. So I never had that issue of being out there. For me, it's just learning the technology that enables me to be out there. And you're right, the first time you do things, they're never that wonderful. And I'm starting, listeners have heard me speak of it before, I'm starting work on a new program next week, where I'm going to be recording a whole new lot of content. And I was talking just before we came on to a gentleman who's going to help me with some of the editing of the videos I'm going to produce, because it's just too much for one person to do everything. I like outsourcing. You'll all agree with that, won't you? We like outsourcing. So I'm going to outsource the video editing. And I was showing him a couple of my early videos to say, well, I like this and I don't like that. And I was looking at them and I was cringing. You know, as somebody who is confident and happy to be on camera, happy to be out there speaking at the PA show for the last 10 years, all of those things. And yet I looked at these videos and I thought, what was I thinking? You know, it's not that they're bad. The content is great. I'm just looking at the green screen and I'm looking at the lighting, and it's the little things that with experience, you hone them as you go. And this new product that I'm producing is going to be light years in production standard to what I started with, because that comes with experience.
And we all have to start somewhere. I think that we can get caught up in our head in that fixed mindset of like, I can't start until I have this in place. I can't start until it's perfect. But if we adopt that kind of mindset, then we never start. I always say to people, you don't need to have your ducks in a row. You just need to get started. Don't even need to have a website. Just start posting. Let people know who you are, how you can help them, and what difference you're going to make for them. And I've challenged my clients and the members of my group. One of them, my members of my group recently did a video for the first time in my group. I was like, practice in here. It's a safe community. And she did. And everyone was like, well done, congratulations. And she's posting more on social media now, on LinkedIn. But our mind is always trying to pull us back to the safety of like, stay where you are, don't change. But that is not going to allow us to create our dreams. I mean, the mind, the brain is amazing, but sometimes it also limits us and isn't always very helpful, because it's millions of years old. It's evolved over the years and it's working off adaptive patterns.
Yeah. So what would you what kind of top 3 things would you say people need to factor or do in order to improve their mindset? What would help somebody who's got that, I'm going to start my VA business, or I've just started and I've got no confidence to get clients, and I really don't know what I'm doing, and perhaps I should all pack it in and go and get a job. So what do they do to help that mindset?
So I think the first thing I'd advise is about conscious language. And what I mean by that is being conscious of the internal dialogue that you're creating in your head. Now, we all have internal dialogue, thoughts about our ability or inability to be able to do something. And it's about getting curious with those thoughts. So if you find yourself, or one of your audience members finds themselves saying, oh, maybe I should just give up, I can't do this, I'm no good at this, like, challenge that thought, flip the switch, and just, you can do what's called a pattern interrupt. So if you hear yourself saying something negative, or you catch that thought, you can say something like stop, or not going there, or no way, or you choose your word. And it's a pattern interrupt in that thought process. And then you plug it in with a new thought process, and you flip the switch and literally change that statement. I can do this. I will make this a success. Now, initially, it's going to feel very alien, very confusing, because you don't believe it. But the more and more you practice this, the easier it becomes to start believing the new statement, the new affirmation that you create. But you have to take aligned action as well. So if you say, I can't do it, I can't make a success of my VA business, you do that pattern interrupt, and then you flip the switch and you say, I can make a success. Okay, what aligned action are you going to take? Are you going to post in a Facebook group? Are you going to go to a networking group? You've got to take action, because yes, we can change our thoughts, but we also have to take aligned action, which aligns with those thoughts that will help us move to that next step. So I think that would be my first thing, because we are what we think. We are, totally. What I've said this before, what we think affects how we feel affects how we act, and how we act affects the outcome that we create in our life. So thoughts are the first thing. I think the second thing is, in terms of getting your mindset in the right place, in terms of building a VA business, let me think of the best one. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm just giving you space. I'm fidgeting.
I'm just thinking, I think having a good morning routine is a really good practice, because I believe, as Tony Robbins says, the way that you start your day is the way that you end your day. So if you wake up with your phone next to your bed and you're just constantly scrolling as soon as you get up, then you're not starting your day the way you want to, run that day or end that day. So having a good morning practice. So I do things like visualization, getting into the feeling of what I want to create, like what it feels like to get that next client, or what it feels like to launch my online course. You can do affirmations, reading. I listen to podcasts every morning. So create the positive mindset from the beginning of the day. So I think that would be the second thing. The third thing I would say is be aware of perhaps your money patterns. Now, I have a freebie on unlocking or uncovering your hidden money blocks. And this is always an area of interest to me, because we all have beliefs around money or hidden money blocks from, again, it comes back to our childhood, what we've been told about money. Like some of my money stories that I heard growing up from my parents was, money doesn't grow on trees. Heard that one a lot. You know, don't borrow or lend money. You know, it's not safe to get it. You know, it's wrong to have credit card debt. Look after the pennies and the pounds and look after themselves. That was one of my mum's favourites.
Yes.
Yes. And you know, you have to work really hard to be a success, and that's what I'm working on, because you can take it so literally that you work all the hours and then you don't give yourself that balance.
Yeah.
So really dig into your money story and discover, like, what were your beliefs around money growing up? What are you making money mean to you? Are you a saver or are you a spender? What beliefs did your parents have around money? Because all of this is going to affect your ability to charge your worth and then be open to receiving. Now, what I mean about being open to receiving is you've got a business, like you're out there, you're posting on social media, but you're not asking for the sale. You're not saying to them, this is the call to action. This is the next step. You book a call with me. We have a discovery call. We see if we're the right fit. You sign a contract, and then, you know, here's your invoice. If you're not giving them that next step, you're not open to receiving. Maybe it doesn't feel safe to receive money. Maybe that's linked to an experience you had in your childhood. So really understanding your money beliefs is really, really important. And at my website at the top, you can click a link to download that hidden money blocks guide, which will take you through some exercises to help discover your money story and how to work through that to start changing that and creating transformation there. Yeah. Because as a business owner, we have to charge money. We have to ask for the sale, because otherwise we just become a charity.
That's right. And it's interesting you talk about that. We've talked about money a couple of times, haven't we, Jo, over the last year or so? And specifically when I was listening to Denise Duffield Thomas' book, Chillpreneur, and then Get Rich Lucky Bitch, and really very amazing transformational things happen when you follow that sort of thing. And I've taken my eye off the ball and I've noticed it. And that's gonna change, but yeah, no, it is really important, and it is so important, the things that we do hear as kids, or that we sense, when it might not even be specific or explicitly said, but it's a feeling. And I know I definitely have hang-ups around money because of, and I know what it's all tied to. So, but breaking that is tough.
Oh, sorry, Susie, I was just going to say, I recognise so many of those things that you were saying. Yeah. You know, I grew up in a house where we were the oldest of four. Money wasn't abundant, and that was constantly the message that money is not abundant. It doesn't grow on trees.
Exactly.
You know? The other message that was very, very common in my world as a child was that people with money were not necessarily bad, but there was something. They were just different to us. They were not quite the same as us, and that money brought evil, and not that's a bit strong, but it's that kind of vibe, you know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Jo, and there's so many different money beliefs, from, you know, rich people are evil, or there's them and there's us, i.e. the people that have money and the people that don't, and that kind of separation. I love what you said, Shelley, about Denise Duffield Thomas. I read Chillpreneur a little while ago and increased my prices, and I want to do her boot camp next year. But Joe, going back to what you said, it's so interesting, isn't it? The beliefs that we grew up with. And when we dig into them, hearing things like money doesn't grow on trees, it's like a scarcity mindset. Like there's only so much, or look after the pennies and the pounds and look after themselves, which basically says, well, you need to save every penny because you might not have enough, or you have to work really hard for money, which again suggests you have to work really hard to make money to get by. And like my parents are born in 42 and 43, and then their parents would have been born in, I don't know, really, maybe before the First World War. Yeah, I think my mum's dad was born in 1908, so that was just before the First
before the First World War.
But we have generational patterns, and we pass down our beliefs around money and other things, as in our life, to our children, and then they pass it on to their children. And unless we work on those money beliefs, and it's a continuous thing, you don't just go, I've done it, that's it. You've got to continually work on them, because they will start to pop up again. But and that's why I say, like, speak to your parents, speak to your grandparents, and speak to your family members. What sayings do they have around money? What are their beliefs around money? And take some time to journal on it, and just get curious with that, because it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
I think your parents are a similar sort of age group to mine, based on the times that you're sort of saying there, and I think some of their mindset came from that period post World War II, when things were scarce and you did have to, and that's where some of their money stories came. Even if pre the war they were more abundant, everybody went through this real scarcity. And I think there is a generation, and I think that does pass down, but I'm trying to be very conscious and not pass it on, or those types of messages to my boys,
and it comes back to that consciousness of, like, what am I saying? What is the message that I'm spreading? And it's interesting, because I think back to my parents, and my mum would, like, she'd have a dress that she'd had for 20 years. She wouldn't be like, oh, I fancy something new. She'd keep things for 20 years. She'd never really bought much for herself. She was much more frugal. But what was interesting was my dad was quite different with money. He was the breadwinner. My mum was, effectively a housewife. She did the diary for my dad, who ran his own plumbing and heating business. And so she was very frugal. What my dad was very much like, he wanted to buy the best of the best. He'd buy the best of the best for my mum. He'd buy the best technology as it came out. And he actually ended up getting into debt when he passed away. I realized there was some debt there with the inheritance. So I always find it interesting that one of my parents was quite frugal and like, let's buy stuff from a jumble sale or a school fair. When it was, I got to Christmas and I was like, oh, secondhand present. and then my dad always wanted to get the best of the best. And I was like, it was interesting how those two different perspectives around money have then affected me. I'm definitely more of a spender, like my dad was, than a saver. And being a spender can be good, but it can also have its limitations. And the same with saving, because if you save and save and save, and you don't invest in yourself, or you don't invest in your business, then you're limiting your growth.
Yeah, it's like anything, isn't it? It's a balancing act, whatever it is. But I think, we could talk about this all day. It's such a fascinating subject. But no, I mean, the money mindset is something that is really, really important when you're running a business. And sometimes you have to invest and take risks in order to reach the next stage. But you also have to be careful that you don't overdo it with the risk part.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and when we do overdo it with the risk part, which I've done before, it's about recognizing that pattern, or is there a pattern? And looking back over the years, which I've done recently, I journaled in it. And I was like, oh, here's a pattern. Like, you see similar things happening. And when there's a pattern and you have the awareness, the conscious awareness as a pattern, that's when you can start to do something about it. You can take action.
So much of the things that we do are habits, aren't they? And we just do them. Another great book that I listened to, because I've been listening on my morning walks, we've talked about, is my book's just gone right out my head. James, the Habit book. Oh gosh,
James, I know the one.
James Clear.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Atomic Habits.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
That.
Yeah, we talked about that quite a lot when I read it, because I found that fascinating too, about how to break down the things that you do and figure out what they are, and how to change that by incremental steps, which is quite fascinating. Nobody had ever broken it down for me like that. So all of these things
and also important. The brain likes to save time, likes to be efficient. So if you've got a habit of thinking a similar thing, like, oh, I don't have enough money, or I'm never going to get a VA client, it will just keep feeding that to you on a loop. It'll be like, oh, well, we'll just put that on replay, don't need to deal with that again. It becomes an unconscious habit. And then you keep replaying it. And then when we break it down, like you say, and get curious and explore it, we can change that habit and change that thought belief.
It's like using the word should, Suzi.
Yes.
I should do this. And there is an awful lot of guilt attached to the word should. And it's one of the words that I have made a conscious effort to remove. And there's no such thing as should. I may need to do something, but at the end of the day, should have it's that driver of guilt that you should have done something.
Words can have a heavy connotation, and I learned a lot about reframing language more recently with my coaches that I worked with last year. And as you say, should is a very heavy word, and it's almost a form of self-bullying. You should have done better than that. You should be here by now, or you need to do this. But if we change should to like, oh, I could be further along. Okay, what can I do differently? I need to do this. No, I get to. And I love to reframe to I get to. Oh, I need to write that blog. No, I get to, because it comes back to we have a choice. We get to take this action. We don't need to anything. So when we shift from the shoulds and the needs and out of that self-bullying into more of a self-love space of, oh, I could, or I get to, you feel more empowered. And you also notice that shift in your body. So if you say should and then you say could, notice how it feels in your body. Notice the difference. Does it feel heavier? Does it feel lighter? So it's a really nice way to explore the impact of language on our body.
It reminds me of the phrase in my school report, must do better. And it is that whole should. It's should do better. Must do. It's could. That kind of language, isn't it?
It could do better. I remember read writing, it was in primary school, see me, and I have an underlying belief that, oh my god, I'm going to get in trouble. It's kind of one of my core belief, and something I'm still working on. And I can see it now, and I'm like, it's like, see why she said see me, am I in trouble? And my parents are quite strict, so maybe it was partly related to that. But again, it's the meaning that we apply to things. So, she may have been wanting to give constructive feedback. She might not want to criticize me. She was there to teach me and educate me, but it's what we make things mean to us. So if a member of your audience is building a virtual assistant business, maybe they've been going for 6 weeks and they haven't got a client yet, it's like, what are they making that mean to them? Are they making it mean that they're a failure, that it's not going to work? No. It can often take longer than 6 weeks. It really depends on so many factors: how much you network, how much you're visible, what you're doing to market and promote your business. So
sometimes it's just being in the right place at the right time, and there's no amount of preparation for that instant, and there are people who've been in the right place at the right time and it's all happened immediately, and there are others I know, and Shelley probably knows them, and you probably know them in the community, where it's taken 3, 4, 5 months with no apparent reason, because they're doing all the right stuff, they're talking, they're visible, they're but they're just not catching that right wave at that right moment. And it is about, there is a bit of serendipity in all of these things, I think.
And I think one of the things I find as well, having taken clients through my coaching programs, is that people go at different stages. So one client that comes to mind, she's like, right, I want this. It's like, we want to move away from pain, like not physical pain, but more the emotional, psychological pain of feeling unhappy in that role, not having enough time, you know, with the family, etc., not having enough freedom and flexibility, to, you know, the pleasure of having that freedom and flexibility, being able to spend more time with the family. So sometimes, like, we're not in enough pain or discomfort, and we're not taking enough action. And I've seen different results with different clients in my program, because it really depends on where they're at and what they want to get out of it. Like, one client that I work with in Saudi, you know, for her, the program was more about her increasing her confidence, her self-belief, ditching the imposter syndrome, and just having that confidence to know that she could move forward. She had all the strategy so she can go forward. Whereas another client would be like, right, you know, I absolutely want to leave my day job right now. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And she did amazingly well because she was ready for that stage. But clients will be at different stages. So it's about meeting them as a coach. It's about meeting them where they're at, with, you know, and supporting them what they need. They have all the resources within my program, you know, structure, etc. But, you know, it's about meeting them where they're at, because, you know, everyone's at a different stage. We're all on a journey.
Yeah. It's like you can't compare your start to somebody else's middle or end, because and also we all know this, and we've said this many times, haven't we, Jo, that we all put forward a great image on social media. You know, everything's always rosy in the garden. We're all doing well. We're all got loads of clients, loads of training. It's all hunky-dory. But that's the public persona that we put out. And behind the screen, we might be sitting there biting our nails and saying, where's the next meal going to come from? And you really cannot compare yourself to somebody else, because exactly as you said, everybody is in a different stage.
Yeah, exactly. It's like comparing your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20. And I remember I was going through a phase about a year or so ago where I was listening to podcasts and following different people, and I was like, oh, well, they're going to be more successful because they've got a business degree. And I was comparing myself to someone else, but I don't know what's going on behind closed doors. I don't know what challenges they have. I mean, you know, one person in particular had, I think, twins, and I don't even have children, so I have a cat. And so we all have our own challenges, but often it's like the story that we tell ourselves in our head. It's us, someone else. Like, we all have the ability to actually, you know, to create our goals and dreams and to follow that, but it has to start with us, because if we don't believe we can do it, then we won't. And my very first mindset lesson was, I think, probably 16. I was in the hall at school, and I remember the headmaster saying, if you believe that you're going to do badly in your exams, you'll do badly. If you believe you're going to do well, you'll do well. And I was like, oh, he's got a good point. And it was so interesting, and it's always stuck with me, because it's so true. It's like, what you focus on, you're going to bring that in. If you feel like you're going to not be able to build a successful online VA business, then, you know, you're going to be focusing on that. It's not going to make you feel good. It's not going to motivate you to take action. So you got to flip the switch.
Yeah, I love that, flip the switch. Well, I used to have nightmares as a child, and I used to tell myself that it was like watching the television, and I would change the channel. So flip the switch really resonates with me, because I used to change the channel.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, no, it was, I don't know where that came from, but you know, that was what it was. But Suzi, this has been a phenomenal interview, and I'm sure that our listeners are going to have lots of things to think about and start to focus on. And hopefully, listeners, you're going to start focusing on the positive language and start working on your money beliefs and your money stories, and go over to Suzi's website. The details will be on the webpage, and download her free money block guide, because I'm sure that's going to be incredibly valuable. So Suzi, thank you very much for coming back on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Jo, so much for having me. So wishing you both an amazing festive period, and let's hope 2022 brings us a little bit more social activity and a bit more normality. Let's see what 2022 brings. But thank you so much, both of you.
You're welcome. Welcome back, listeners. And it was such a great chat there with Suzi Flynn, wasn't it, Jo?
Yeah, and it's a topic we've talked about many times. and it's a topic that is so fundamental to your business, even before you think about contracts or GDPR or any of those things. If you don't have the headspace, it doesn't matter whether you've got a contract or you've got to be in that headspace that I am now a business owner. I'm going to do things a different way to when I was an employee. And then there's the headspace on top of it, as we talked about I'm going to charge the right money for what I'm doing, and I'm in this business to make money. And it is a mindset thing, as we both said.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really crucial thing to think about. And it's not just the money side of it. I mean, we did talk extensively about money, but as Suzi was talking about at the beginning, that kind of idea of knowing that you can do it and believing that you can do it. I think it was actually Henry Ford that said the phrase, if you believe you can, you will. And if you believe you can't, whichever way you believe you're right. Like she said, her headmaster said that. And it comes from, I'm pretty sure it was Henry Ford, or it might have been Napoleon Hill. I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, quoting Henry Ford. I think that's what it was, because I read that book many, many years ago. But I think it's really important that you have to have that self-belief that you can do it. And this idea of comparisonitis, we all compare ourselves all the time, never mind just in business. We do it all the time in our lives, don't we? She's thinner than I am, she's fatter than I am, she's got better skin than I have, my hair's the wrong color, all of those things that we do all the time, and none of us know what's going on for the other person. So I think I think that was an important thing to discuss as well.
And it is important to remember that person that you're admiring on social media, you're only seeing what they've chosen to put on social media, and you didn't see them when they rolled out of bed with the hair sticking up and screaming at their kids over the breakfast table because there's been a fight, or all of the domestic things that as working parents you have experienced. That person will have experienced. They've just chosen not to put that on their beautifully curated Insta feed or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is important that we remember that we need to stay in our own lane, and we need to focus on what we are good at and what we do. And that does mean that, there are people better than us at certain things, but equally we are better at certain things than other people. And the benefit of sort of working together is that you can become better if you have the right mindset to work with that person who is more skilled in that topic, and vice versa, because you can all bring something to the party.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. And that idea of we all start from a different place. And, somebody might have been very, very lucky that they were working in an employed position, and 2 or 3 of their friends have asked them to help them out in the evenings. And all of a sudden they realize they've got a business. But that's almost a fluke. It's a thing about, right, as you said in the interview, right time, right place. Whereas somebody else might have this wonderful plan, finally get everything ready, hand in their notice, and then start, and then the clients just aren't there. So you cannot compare where you are. And we've talked over the time of the podcast many a time about niching. And what you were just saying made me think of that, in that we can't all be good at everything. And one of the big questions that I see in the groups I'm in is, what services should we be promoting? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Am I a jack of all trades and master of none? Or are there 2 or 3 things that I'm really good at and I'm going to outsource the other stuff, or collaborate with another VA for the other stuff? So I think also finding that niche it is quite important. And I think that's difficult.
That's a mindset thing again, though, isn't it? Because one of the beauties, and I found this going from sort of a corporate environment to being out on my own, is there are things that you do in your PAYE world that you do because you're PAYE and you don't have a choice. And then when you come out into being self-employed or running a business, however you want to call it, you have to get into that mindset, right? That, do you know what? I don't have to do that thing I hated for the last 20 years that I always did as PAYE. And in my own case, do I like Canva? No. Do I do Canva? No.
Absolutely not.
But there is a mindset thing, because for a long time I did Canva, not because I offered it as a service, but because I felt I had to do that. And I got to the point one day, as we've said before, I don't like Canva. I don't enjoy working in Canva. You know, I made my vision board in it yesterday. And that was quite nice because I was just fannying about and all, and I didn't have to worry about it looking a certain business way. But would I do that? No, no. And for somebody else to get to that mindset where they say, do you know what, I don't like diary management, or I don't like Excel, or I don't like.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. So I think it's, but I also recognize, certainly in the VA world, I can also recognize that when you first start out, in order to get clients, one might feel that one has to offer everything.
Exactly.
And you might start offering everything, and then gradually you'll whittle down, and eventually you'll figure out which things make your heart sing and which things make you want to crawl under a rock and never come out. Like Canva in your case.
But originally, when I first started by myself, I did a lot of things that I don't do now, you know, and now I've whittled it down, and I'm very clear on what I love to do, and anything I don't like to do, I find someone who can do that, or it just doesn't get done. And if I don't like it enough to worry about outsourcing it or doing it myself, it really isn't important.
Yeah.
But I think that is the benefit of having been around the block a few years.
Yeah.
It from a business perspective, like you, Shelley.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. It's an evolving process, and we don't all appear in the business world with all the answers on day one. It's just not possible. It's like learning to ride a bike, but watching a baby learn to walk. I've been watching our toddler grandson in London, Ethan, over the last week. When we got there, he wasn't walking, and by the time we left over that course of that week, he was upright more than he was crawling. And it's just fascinating to watch. But how many times do children fall down when they're learning to walk? How many times do you fall off a bike when you're learning to ride a bike? These things don't happen like that. They take practice. And as I said in the interview, I was looking back at some of my original videos, and where the content is fine, I'm now looking at it from a production point of view, because I've now got however many years experience producing video. I'm producing myself in video. That's a really hard thing, by the way. If you're ever needing to record yourself at the beginning, when you have to watch yourself back, it's cringeworthy. But gradually I've got to the position where I watch my course videos back and I think, oh, she's quite good. She knows what she's talking about. But it takes a long time to get from point A to point C, for example, to do that. And so when you look back on the early things you did, you might think, oh my God, what was I thinking about? Or why did I do that? But it's all part of the journey. It's all part of that learning to get to how good you are now.
Yeah.
So, so I think that's probably a good place to stop for today's episode. So listeners, thank you ever so much for listening or watching, if you're watching this on the website or on YouTube. And all of the contact details for Joe, myself, and Suzi are on the webpage. Do remember to head over to Suzi Flynn's website and download the money cheat guide thing, whatever it was she called it. I can't remember, but there you go. My brain, it's the end of the day. That's my excuse anyway. And that's the excuse I'll keep making. So listeners, thank you once again for listening. Only a couple more episodes left, I'm afraid, but we have been thoroughly enjoying the podcast, and we've got a couple more really cracking episodes coming up in the next couple of weeks after Christmas. And we'll see you then.
You have been listening to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with Shelley Fishel and Joe Brianti. We will be back with you again next week with yet another amazing episode. See you then.